I think as whether you're a leader or an individual contributor, manager, executive, at the end of the day, like have that critical eye with yourself and say, am I doing everything I can
Mhm.
to deliver for this business?
Mhm.
Because the business pays us a salary or, compensates us to be able to support the business. That's our job.
Mhm.
We were hired to do that. The
Yeah.
business, if we're not doing it as effectively as possible, the business doesn't owe us anything, which is why
Mhm.
you're seeing the contraction for a lot of companies is causing layoffs, which means we have to do more with less. And the truth is, can you?
Yeah.
If you can, do it. And if you can't, then maybe try to find another pathway to either within your company or, like I see the writing on the wall with companies all the time and say, okay, it's time to move on, right? Where can I be
Mhm.
of more value, of more service?
Welcome to the Great Life Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and together we'll grapple with our messy, beautiful, and ever-changing personal and professional lives and the business world around us. I deeply believe there is no one right way to do this thing called life. Let's experiment together. As a quick reminder, friends, please note that this podcast is an independent production and the information presented here and views expressed here reflect my personal opinion and do not reflect the views or positions of any organization or company that I'm affiliated with. Enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Great Life Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and I'm so excited for this episode today. The guest we have today is Kathy Keating. She is a technology executive board director. She is a multi-time founder and has exited from one of her startups. She is a trusted advisor. For many of you listening, you are also in the tech space. She has been in the SaaS, the B2B, as well as the B2B2C side of things. So she's seen lots of different companies and has 30 plus years of experience. And recently, she has launched a book with her co authors, and it is called Liquid. We are going to get into the book today, but first day out, it is a bestseller in 3 categories. So I'm really excited for her. Congratulations, Kathy. I'm so glad that you could be with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I have chills down my spine when I hear bestseller. When an author always hopes for that, especially on our first book.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, since you are in a full-blown, media tour, talking in the book, we will start there. The title is called Liquid: How CEOs and CTOs Unlock Flow and Momentum in Complex Systems. I don't think you could have better timed this book, given everything that is going on in our industries and in our world right now. But let's talk about the book first, and then as you and I have spoken, I think there are a lot of parallels to kind of the professional and personal life that a lot of us are feeling right now. And, how can we relate that to our personal lives as well? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, but also your co-authors and why Liquid? Why now?
Great. Happy to. So I've been a CTO. I'm a CTO. I've been a technologist all my career. And I've been really blessed to have seen a lot of complex challenges that companies were trying to overcome with their product. I've had a lot of firsts that I've worked for companies that there was a first in the industry. Those companies grew. And thankfully, I had a lot of experience with
Mhm.
success in those companies to see how to do growth effectively versus getting captured in the chaos and the mire of that complexity that growth brings for a company. And so having seen it done well, and of course I've seen many times that it's been done poorly as well, I started to be
Mhm.
able to distinguish and what are in this moment, what is my choice to move in the direction that's going to help us get to success or get stuck in where I'm at. And so a lot of that experience that I've had in my career is really infused into Liquid. So the concept of Liquid is the recognition that running our businesses is complex. And the complexity of our businesses is something that as leaders we often can't see. We think,
Mhm.
there's a bunch of tasks, we have to get this done, we have a vision, we have a mission, a roadmap, and we start to distill those in our brain down to something that's simple. Oh, it's a simple fix to just fix this problem. And
Mhm.
so we, as leaders, try to apply simple solutions or simple fixes to fix the complexity of how to run and grow our business. And
Yeah.
the truth is there's no simple fix for really complex problems. If you understand anything about systems theory, complex adaptive systems, systems thinking, you realize that you actually can't fix complexity. You can only influence the system to move in the direction that you want.
Mm.
And so in Liquid, we take the concepts that are really complicated around systems theory and bring it down into stories and explanations that we can relate to as business owners. A good example is we take a mythical company, Alice, and Alice is the CEO, Theo is the CTO, and we take that company through the book from idea all the way to enterprise.
Mhm.
And the transitions that they go through where they hit the wall on complexity and how do they fix that so that they can bring the business back to liquid instead of boiling, right? Because you think of boiling water, everything is escaping, the water's going everywhere. It's a
Mhm.
very great analogy to our business. And we want to bring it back to liquid, calm, flowing. How do we help our business stay in that mode where we're most productive, where the chaos is not inhibiting our ability from grow? So we follow Alice and Theo through the whole evolution of their company where they run into all sorts of challenges and they
Mhm.
either boil or the opposite, which is freeze, right? Where, ice breaks and very easily and it's very brittle. And so our businesses can boil and freeze just like water can boil and freeze.
Mhm.
And so how do we take ourselves out of those situations and bring them back to liquid? And that's how the title became the title.
I
So
love it. I love the analogy, and I think a lot of us can relate. And your background, you've had HR tech, you've had FinTech, which is the space that I play in, right? You've had health tech, right? So you've had a lot of different varieties, and you were also very early on in AI, right? Before everybody's been talking about AI. Maybe we can talk
yeah,
about that here in a minute. But what I'm noticing, especially with really large enterprise companies, I won't even say companies, organizations, right? Because they can be universities, they can be hospitals and whatnot. But either everything is so chaotic and so much change is happening that it feels like everything's on fire. But to your analogy, and I think it can feel, the more complex or the bigger the organization, it can start to almost feel sluggish. Like the
yeah,
flow is not happening and it's almost like that sludge feeling. And like, how do I get back into flow? But at the same time, it's like it's more than one thing can be true. It feels like you have sludge and fire
yeah. Well, you
happening at the
can,
same time.
and now we talk about that in the book as well. We have some examples of different types of complexity you might have. You might have cultural complexity where your culture is frozen. No one feels trust, so they won't do anything. And then you might have a project which is on fire and has a hard deadline, and you've dropped all your process related to that. And
Mhm.
so you have the lack of trust, which is freeze, right? The people are
Mhm.
frozen, and you have project complexity where the project is boiling, right? And so
Yeah.
then how do you bring those two into alignment so that you can build more trust, which would
Yeah.
bring the culture to more flow, and then add just enough lean process to that
Mhm.
chaotic project so that it can actually deliver on time, right? As you need it to. And so, yeah, you can be frozen and boiling at the same time from different aspects. And so that gets into where complexity shows up is like, again, it's no simple one thing that you can fix in that situation, and it especially shows up in scale ups and enterprise because there's just so much going on,
Yeah.
and so you might have that situation very often. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I hear more and more leaders talking about we need to move faster. We need to move faster in disruption. And I think there's both a perception of needing to move faster and then the reality of you may be left behind, right? You only have, so much window in the marketplace. But they're really big companies or products or, if you're talking about healthcare compliance areas, there seems to be this real tension and struggle with how do you move fast, but when you can't break things, right?
Yeah.
And that tension, and I think a lot of CEOs, CTOs, chief product officers, right? It's happening at the C-suite, but then somebody will say, "Okay, we need to move faster at the C-suite," and then it's left for SVPs, VPs, directors, managers, right, all the way down the line to figure out, okay, how do we simplify but honor that it is still complex? Like, what advice do you have, and can you speak to, like, parts in the book that people can look towards of maybe when you have disconnects in the organization of go fast, but that's been oversimplified, and then people that are feeling stuck, but maybe they do need to free up a little bit because it's not one or the other.
Well, I think there's this common misconception about speed. Um,
Mm,
in that speed is not a task that you do. Speed is
mm,
the emergent property or the outcome of what you do. Speed is what shows up, right?
okay.
Speed is the outcome. And when someone says, we need to move fast, we need to move fast, we need to move fast, uh, and then they try to implement a bunch of tasks, simple tasks that
Mhm.
quote, make us move fast. Oh, we're going to drop some meetings. Oh, we're going to write less documentation ahead of time. We just want product and engineering to talk together, sit next to each other. So we're going to set them next. So they add all these simple tasks, simple, like well understood things that are certainly things that you can do that might help cause speed to happen, but they aren't speed. They
Mm,
aren't they aren't actually the outcome that you want. They're just tasks that you're going to do. And the question I have, are those the right tasks that you can implement that will cause speed to happen? Right? Speed
mhm.
is something that emerges from the system, not something that you can force to happen. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does.
And so the question is, like, you can go off and make a lot of motion, and a
Mhm,
lot of times you see CEOs saying, well, I just want stop writing documentation and just have the engineers code. And I'm like, okay, well, then your process is chaos. And so what you're doing is in a desire to move faster, you're actually boiling the system. And the act of boiling the system causes speed not to happen. So you'll actually move slower. And so
yes.
once you understand that the change I need to make is to actually, let's say, write less documentation, record my transcripts, use AI, turn them into directions, better document what I'm doing, but document it leanly, right? There are a lot of other actions you can take that can have speed be the emergent property that you see in your system. But
Mhm,
there's also a lot of things that you think you might do, might help, but that actually inhibits speed from happening. And so, we often talk about like what is it? 9 women can't have a baby in a month, right? Right? It's the same. I'm trying to remember Brooke, I think it's Brooke's Law, right? Where adding more manpower to a late project makes it later, right? Like there's
mhm,
these like there's research about these situations where what seems like it's the right decision is actually the wrong decision to create speed. So,
mhm,
so we look at speed and even shield. We use the word shield in the book, which would be like cybersecurity, protecting yourself from risk.
mhm,
We look at those as emergent properties. You're protecting your organization is an emergent property or an outcome of how we operate in flow.
mhm.
So,
So in the book, you have what you call sentinels.
yeah.
Can you talk about the Four Sentinels? Because we've touched on one in the beginning of two. Can you talk about the Four
Yeah.
Sentinels?
So when you think of a sentinel, that's a person that's standing on the corner of the tower in the castle, making sure that everything is happening well, right? They're
Mhm.
watching over, ensuring that the business or the countryside is protected, right? And so
Mhm.
when we think of that sentinel, they're the person that's protecting. And so the four sentinel for us again are those emergent properties that protect the business in when you see these happening within a business, they tell us that the business is operating effectively. And so the four
Okay.
sentinel are kind of the key outcomes that we see in an effective business. And so we talked about speed as an emergent property
Mhm.
of operating well. Shield is the other one we started to talk about. And so think about all the, am I picking the right tech stack? Is that tech stack, am I going to be able to hire for that tech stack? How am I utilizing my data? Compliance fits into that. Security fits into that.
Mhm.
These are all things that we do as a business that cause our business to be protected
Mhm.
from bad actors.
Mhm.
And then the third sentinel is sales, and sales is, we often think of sales as that go-to-market team who's out there, cold calling or taking inbounds. But in reality, everything we do in our role, especially as a leader, is sales. I have to sell ideas. I have to convince you that if I move this way or that way, or I suggest this product or that product feature, or I architect in this way, that it's the best choice for the
Mhm.
business. And so I'm selling my ideas. So product is an example of everything we do in product, proof of concepts, MVPs, how we approach this. These are all what we call sales. And so you
Mhm.
want a really well functioning sales capability, no matter what role you're in. So
Mhm.
how do you communicate? Do you communicate effectively, right? It all
Mhm.
falls into that sales. And so we often find, especially with CTOs, that they don't have the skill. They aren't able to communicate upwards effectively. And so we do a lot
Mhm.
of coaching with CTOs to help them be more effective in that. And then, of course, the final property, the final sentinel is stretch. We want to always be stretching and growing, because if we want our business to grow, then as leaders, we have to be able to grow. We have to be in that uncomfortable
Mhm.
space where we don't know how to do something. Especially in this day and age of AI, we're, our background, our skills no longer are why we're hired. We're hired for being able to problem solve, right? And so
Mhm.
that's the ability to stand in the face of something we've never seen before and problem solve how we're going to approach it. And so I need to always be, or we need to always be stretching ourselves to be in that uncomfortable space where we, let's say, don't know the problem and are going to figure it out. So the
Yeah.
Four Sentinel, speed, stretch, shield, and sales, these are all emergent properties of flow, of operating effectively as a systems thinker. And, we call that liquid. Or am I liquid today?
Mhm.
Am I in flow?
So related to the stretch sentinel, so much of what I have been talking about on this show, in my calls with my mentees or just other people in the industry, whether it's our business or teams or personally, everybody is feeling this profound sense of change is happening, movement is happening. Probably a lack of capacity. A lot of people feel overstretched. Like I have to do all of these things all at once, but you're like so overstretched, then you don't move at all.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
just
yeah.
paralyzed. And this feeling that the old playbooks, the old strategies, the old tactics are not only not working for our products, and so we're being challenged to create new products, new tools, but professionally, right? We're being challenged to pivot and go back to what I think of often when I talk about, from core principles or from a first principles standpoint as well. And so it's we're being forced into that stretch. It sometimes feels a little bit better if you voluntarily go to stretch of like, I'm setting aside time to learn and to grow, and other times that the situation's forcing that upon you.
Yeah, the question I have, people, humans, we don't love change. We like
Mhm.
predictability. We like the answers. We don't like to go into things blindly. And so the question is like, as a person and a leader, how much have you just embraced that I'm not going to know and I just have to figure it out and go
Mhm.
forward? How much have you embraced the concept of change? Is the concept, when I say the word you have to change, do you feel horrified,
Yeah.
fearful, or do you go like, okay, that sounds fun. Let's figure it out, right? How
Mhm.
much are you in alignment with that concept of change and growth? Or how much do you go kicking and screaming, right?
Yeah.
How comfortable are you where you are versus how much do you wanna be in the next phase? How much do you wanna move to the next thing? And I think somewhere along the way, this is probably when I founded maybe the first or second company. I really felt it with the second company, though. Um, I really realized that I just have to constantly be changing.
Mhm.
I have to look at whatever's being hitting me in the face today, the hundreds of things I've never solved before today, and I just have to say, let's roll with it. So I actually built some pretty cool personal habits in that second company as I came into that second company. So I do a personal reflection at the end of every day, like a personal retro. Just a few
Mm.
minutes, right? What worked well, what didn't, what do I need to do differently tomorrow? And that habit really changed my relationship with change. I
How
don't
so?
care about change. I mean, I want change every day. I can make big changes in my life, big changes in my career, big changes in my home, and I'll be like, "Yeah, okay, I have the facts. The facts tell me that this is a reasonable path. I have a plan. Let's go."
Mhm.
Right? I'm not afraid, and I've also disassociated my action from outcome. And this is
Mm.
where I think the book Liquid could really help on a personal level is, um, when there's complexity, like growing ourselves, our career, our personal life, making big decisions in our personal life, that's a complex thing. It's not a
Mhm.
simple thing. If it was simple, everyone would do it. But because it's complex and we apply complex systems theory to it, we recognize that we can't change it, we can only influence it, right? And so when I make a step or do a task or an action, I have to do many of them to be able to influence the change I want. So
Mm.
that's where the disconnection between I'm going to do this thing today in hopes that it'll influence the system over time. And so
Mhm.
I really look at my outcomes completely separate from the actions I take, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but, like, I might have to do several actions over the course of several weeks in order to see the emergent results come.
Mhm.
It's a lot of what we do in product, like, as product managers, is to say, "Okay, I have this hypothesis that if I put this feature out there and build it, they will come," right?
Mhm.
Um, and they might or they might not, or they may adapt to that feature in a different way, and we have to be okay with that, right? And so, yeah, disassociating my actions, what I do from that outcome, it's in alignment with that outcome, but I don't expect that outcome to happen just from that one action.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that goes in with layering the other pieces of what you were talking about of it's not just speed, it's not just stretch and doing I think as I've talked about before, there's a difference between doing something that has some risk versus being reckless, right? And that gets to your, your shield um piece as well. And so it's not just one facet, right? It's multiple facets.
yeah.
So in your background, right, because you've been a multi-time founder, you are an advisor to founders, right? You are a board member right now, like in this moment, and I'll say so we're recording this in August of 2025, right? This might change in 2026. What are you hearing or noticing as either the biggest blocks or struggles, like from a mental model standpoint, that people are wrestling with that maybe are not being talked about on LinkedIn? Because we're all in this change, and sometimes you don't even have words for the thing you're experiencing until long after you've experienced it. But you know, from where you've been and now all the people that you're advising right now and talking to, what do you think is the most like unlabeled problem that people are kind of struggling with?
I think I really get into the concept of like all the chatter around AI and the new, breakthroughs we've had with Gen AI, right?
Mhm,
Generative AI, LLMs. Uh, uh, I see that maybe from a little bit of a different perspective because I've worked in AI. I did commercial AI 30 years ago. That was highly successful. And so I just have a different approach to it.
mm,
But I think what I'm seeing is again that people are thinking that there's simple solutions to a very complex problem, which is how is AI going to transform our industry, our
mhm,
society?
mhm,
Right? That's a very complex thing. We don't know the answer to that, right? And
mhm,
so what are we doing? We're doing all these simple things. People are vibe coding things over the weekend that probably will never see the light of day. People are playing around with ChatGPT and putting a bunch of horrible content out there. And then there's a bunch of people who are using it very, very well, very, very
mhm,
productively, who are really thinking about their product and how they can bring AI in and bring like great value add to the product, but we're
mhm,
still living in this world that we still think we're a SaaS product. We still think our company's going to look the way our company looks today, and the
mhm,
AI is just going to enhance it. We're still living in our picture of what the future is going to look like.
mhm,
And I think we're not seeing even where we'll be in 1 to 2 years as an industry and where AI can actually take it
mhm.
because we can't envision it.
Yeah.
Right? So think of the world where you don't have to go into a website to log in and, put a bunch of things in a form. You just get to talk to the computer and the computer does
Mhm.
what the computer needs to do. And if the computer needs to tie 5 different products together to achieve your goal, it just does it, right? That's the world of AI.
Yeah.
Is where I use the analogy a lot of like if you watch the original Star Trek
Mhm.
back in the '60s where they just in Star Trek, they just talk to the computer of the ship and the ship makes it happen.
Yeah.
And that is truly like the best analogy I can make to like where
Mhm,
the future of AI is going. And yet we're still thinking in such simplistic terms.
mhm.
I'm going to use AI to build this feature. I'm going to use AI to help me write content better and we're not thinking about how all these SaaS products can come together and work together without us needing to be there to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
And then I start to back into like, how is that going to change the world of work?
Yes. Oh, absolutely, and I think
Yeah.
about this all the time, and I have the disclaimer in the beginning of the podcast because everything I say is my personal personal view on this one given where I sit at my company. But to your point of how much are people just operating in status quo versus the companies and the C-suite team, right? The CEO and the CTO and other people really thinking about how do we move to the next level? Like there's always a place for automation. And I think some
Hmm.
companies are calling things that are just automated agents and they've just thrown the label
Yeah.
of agent on it.
Yeah.
But the companies that are really looking at how does it change their platform, and when we talk about agents or agentic AI, making sure that it is really achieving an outcome for
Correct.
people on that next level. And, this is where I think it does get into sales of, where's your monetization strategy? Are you still monetizing on a per seat basis? Maybe that makes sense. Or, license. Is it an outcome based? Is it a usage based? I think all areas are changing right now. And, the you should never make predictions, especially on things that are recorded, but, in the next, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, I mean, I think that the gulf is going to get bigger and bigger between the companies and the leadership teams that have embraced it and figured out what do we use and how does it make sense to your point to achieve an outcome. And it's not just, oh, we've done AI, whatever that
Right.
means. We've done the thing, but their organizations haven't evolved and it doesn't actually meaningfully move the company or the work forward. Or, use it as the simple solution. Well, I'll phrase this as a question. So I feel like I've noticed, and have you noticed that AI has also been this promise of productivity, but it has sometimes been used as the oversimplification solution of, oh, we don't need as many people because AI will do it. And so they're putting the cart before the horse. Are you seeing that people are making like human like workforce cuts too soon and to use AI, or I'm not even sure how to use AI so that you have a whole organizational readiness, or maybe it's both.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of rash decisions, like making a decision to cut staff before you have a proven solution in place.
Mhm.
I have definitely seen that. Most of that I'm seeing in the media. I haven't
Mm.
personally seen it. Maybe that's because I'm there as an advisor to say, "Hey, let's prove the outcome before we do something," right?
Yeah.
I am seeing companies be able to get much more productive with the staff they have. And so,
Mhm.
most companies especially startup or scale up mode, especially are already understaffed as it is.
Mhm.
And so they're just able to deliver more with the people they have, and that means
Mhm.
they don't have to grow as fast. And so
Mhm.
that's where I see, big wins around the productivity. I had an engineering team that brought uh, um, Cursor into their engineering flow,
Yeah.
coding, and they were able to get about a 3 to 5x acceleration
Mhm.
on their development, without a loss of quality within about 2 months. I mean, that's
Mm.
huge, right?
That's massive.
And I've seen big changes putting AI into customer service as well to be able to ensure that questions get answered faster
Mhm.
and more accurately. And so that I've seen a lot of productivity gains there. But I think the biggest thing is that you can't be technology first. You have to be use case or outcome first, and I think
Mhm.
you said that, and so that's the biggest thing I advise on when with all these companies who are trying to delve into AI, is that a lot of the CEOs are getting a lot of pressure from their investors to lean into technology first. So they're bringing in entire, you know, LLM-enabled infrastructures, just put AI into the product, and there's no plan on what features is AI
Mm.
gonna enable. And so now you've spent, I don't know, 100,000, $200,000 to bring this infrastructure, maybe 8 months for someone to build it, and you still just have an infrastructure. You don't have outcomes.
Mhm.
And I prefer, and I coach and advise, is that you focus on the outcomes. And then
Mhm.
which technology helps you get those outcomes,
Mhm.
right? And then the trick is to like think out of the box. Don't think the way we've thought for the last 20 years. You have to think about a world that is enabled completely different by this technology.
Mm.
So
So if I'm a manager, a director, a VP, maybe I'm not the CTO, CEO, and I'm noticing that maybe there is that oversimplification, right? I'm close enough to the work in the weeds, with my teams as well. Do you have any like tangible advice of a place to start either in a conversation of how do you surface that tension that you're noticing? Because I think there are a lot of people given well, depending the industry you're in, but if your industry has been hit with a lot of layoffs, I think there is this feeling of, well, maybe my leadership team is growth at all costs right now, and it feels very existential, and so maybe people are making more emotional calls, and then the people down below are seeing the reality uh, of how this is playing out, but a fear of like, can I say that? Am I going to be viewed as not being
mm.
on board? Like I'm legacy. I'm, stuck in the mud. I'm not forward thinking. Do you have any advice of how to people maybe use the sales skills and like influencing, but try to have that conversation so that way everybody's making decisions based on reality, not what we hope reality should look like?
I mean, I think for me, it's, I go back to the Four Sentinel. When I think about my job, how do I make sure I'm moving as fast as I can move while protecting my business, articulating the value clearly, and
Mhm.
then continuing to stretch and grow myself, right? If those four qualities and I feel are highly present and I'm doing the best I can in all of those areas.
Mhm.
And really, the stretch is most important because stretch gets you to look at the other three through a critical eye. Am I
Mm.
really moving fast enough? Have I really optimized my process? Do I have
Mhm.
repeatability in it? Right? Am I
Mhm.
really protecting my company? Right?
Mhm.
And so stretch causes us to have this critical eye for all the other three sentinels. And I think as whether you're a leader or an individual contributor, manager, executive, at the end of the day, like have that critical eye with yourself and say, am I doing everything I can
Mhm.
to deliver for this business?
Mhm.
Because the business pays us a salary or, compensates us to be able to support the business. That's our job.
Mhm.
We were hired to do that. The
Yeah.
business, if we're not doing it as effectively as possible, the business doesn't owe us anything, which is why
Mhm.
you're seeing the contraction for a lot of companies is causing layoffs, which means we have to do more with less. And the truth is, can you?
Yeah.
If you can, do it. And if you can't, then maybe try to find another pathway to either within your company or, like I see the writing on the wall with companies all the time and say, okay, it's time to move on, right? Where can I be
Mhm.
of more value, of more service in a different space, right? And that's
Mhm.
where like continue to stretch ourselves. Sometimes we have to walk, sometimes we have to move. Or am I doing the best to articulate myself in the position that I'm at?
Mhm.
So,
When you've to the piece about moving, right? Maybe it's the, how do I stay in the company, but maybe it's I'm ready for a pivot, or the things where I feel like I can best serve have run its course in this company, and I can contribute somewhere else. You've had many pivots in your career. Can you speak to, one or two ideas, principles, mindsets that you had to shift with each of those pivots? For me, for
yeah.
instance, like when I went from consulting into product, I leveraged the skill set that I had of working with customers, being able to get to a problem, right? Holding a space. But the value that I brought to the market was very different because as a consultant, I had to do all things and implement versus being a product manager. I had to hold a space where I was not the only subject matter expert, and I needed to have lots of different voices to come up with the best solution, not like one solution. So for me, that was a pivot of what makes me valuable that I really needed to wrestle with, of what
Mm.
were my transferable skills and how does my value change? Do you have any examples like that when you've pivoted where it's like, I really needed to rethink about XYZ?
Yeah, it was actually when I moved to Colorado. So I'd moved from Massachusetts to Colorado, very different tech scene at the time. And I couldn't get any traction in my career. I was director of engineering, and I realized I didn't have that sales sentinel. I didn't call it that at that moment, but
Mhm.
I didn't have the network. I didn't have a way to communicate as an executive to companies,
Mhm.
to other CEOs, and I needed to build that skill. Plus, I am 100% introverted, and had to figure out how to put on the extrovert cap,
Mhm.
cloak or cape,
Mhm.
to be able to pretend to be an extrovert and be able to network effectively and communicate effectively. And so I had to build those skills. Right?
Mhm.
And so I put myself in all sorts of situations where I had to build those skills and I was confronted to have to communicate effectively.
Mhm.
So, like, I partnered with the Colorado Secretary of State's office. I was a mentor, and I was a mentor for their hackathon. Which was called Go Code Colorado. I was the first mentor there, and I went on to run their mentor program as a volunteer. I mean, I was terrified that first time,
Mhm.
right? Um, but I had to figure out how to build these skills, and the best way to do it is to stretch myself and put myself in positions where I've never done something before and grow, right? And so
Yeah.
over the course of about 2 to 3 years, I gave myself all sorts of experiences where I could play at a VP level and think it was about 2 years in, I got a VP job, and then I eventually founded, which was another thing that I wanted to push myself. I wanted to understand, how do you get VC funding and how do you grow a business and what does it mean to be a finance person or a marketing or sales, which you learn as a founder how to do all the different roles.
Mhm.
So I just put myself in positions where I had to learn skills.
Mhm.
And so I've done lots of pivots that same way. About 3 years ago, I went out on my own as an advisor. I do interim CTO advisory work. I have a framework. I'm an executive coach. All of those were, several actions that I took to build the skills so that I
Mhm.
actually could put that into action
Mhm.
as part of my career, right? I
Mhm.
always say there's no one simple solution to complex challenges, and growing our career is a complex challenge. We have to build new habits, and that means new skills, new ways of working. There's no one and done, and which
Mhm.
is unfortunate for a lot of people. They lose their job and then they wake up and say, I have no network. How do I get a new job? And you're a VP.
Mhm.
And the answer is it's really hard if you have no network and what did I hear? 80% of VP and higher jobs are not posted. They're all hidden. How do you even know they exist? The only way you know they exist is from the people in your network. And if you
Yeah.
don't have your network, you're not going to find that job, right? And so again, all these actions that you have to take to put yourself out there is critical so that when you need that job, that network is already there to provide.
Mhm.
So,
And
yeah.
what I love about what you said, or what I feel is the underlying of what you were saying also, in you very much have a different relationship with discomfort, that you got comfortable with discomfort and that it wasn't a bad thing, it was a signal of you were moving into stretch. Or like, as I've said
Correct.
before, that it's, for me a long time ago, I had to work on rather discomfort feeling like I'm gonna shrink, it just means I need to expand.
Mm,
And so I really hear that through your story, that for you, discomfort and growing is it's something that you embrace and you welcome. And so it seems like you've had a lot of practice and iterations in that expansion. And I very much relate to, with the podcast, I called it, right, the Great Life Experiment, because I think the most important venture you will ever build is your life.
mm,
And there isn't one right way to do it. And it really does take lots of moments of iteration and trying it on. And what works for Kathy might not work for Monique, might not work for, so and so. And how do you play with that and take what works best for you to create that unique thing for you? So I
yeah.
really resonate with your story.
Yeah, there's so many different paths, right? You're right. I think when I hit that second company, when I founded that product company, I had to change my relationship with that discomfort
Mhm.
because maybe being a founder taught me that skill that,
Mhm.
there's no really such thing. The only failure is not learning from our failures. I
Mhm.
think I've gotten to where I am through a series of thousands of different failures that I had to tweak myself.
Mhm.
"Oh, that didn't work. Let's go do the next thing. Okay, well, how can I do that better?" It gets back to my daily retro, right? "Well, how
Mhm.
can I do tomorrow better than I did today? I could have done that better." My I'd rather make 1,000 tiny failures than one massive one,
Mhm.
or not even take the risk for what I wanted because I was too afraid
Mhm.
of that failure, you know? If all my little movements take me in the right direction, I'm gonna eventually win. And
Mhm.
that's proven its way out in my career so far. So,
Mhm. And if you haven't won yet, you gotta keep going.
you keep going. You're just like you could be one more step away, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but if you never take the step, you're never gonna get there.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think first step for everybody listening is to go out to Amazon or wherever you buy books and to get your copy of Liquid. So good. I'm so excited that you're putting this out there in the world. And I hope that people find it, really accessible and helpful to have a framework of kind of those 4 different lenses. Where else can people find you specifically, Kathy, and if they want to collaborate with you?
Well, they can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, Kathy Keating, or on my website, which is kathkeating.com. No Y, Kath Keating. Yeah, either of those places. That's the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. And I will make sure to link everything in the show notes below.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm so glad that you're here, and congrats on an amazing first day. And I'm excited for all the success to come.
Great. Wonderful conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. And remember, friends, there is no one right way to do this thing called life. I hope you found this conversation valuable. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you may listen. And it would mean the world to me if you went and you clicked on rate the show and left a 5-star rating to help other people find these conversations. Until then, friends, keep experimenting. Talk to you soon.